special buttons because this is a special episode. Okay.
Colonel.
Welcome to a very bonus episode of the Battle Science Podcast, a Pokemon Go PvP podcast where we talk about Pokemon Go and all of the things as it relates to PvP. I am one of your hosts, Steven, a.k.a. aBoyInTheWoods, joined as always by Jesse, a.k.a. RocketAdminJ.
What the dog do?
Oh, there he is. We're going to jump right into this. This is a little bonus episode recording on the evening of September 5th. We are into September of 2021, and boy, will we have a lot of news for you in just a couple of days for the regular episode of the Battle Science Podcast. If you are new to the Battle Science Podcast, this is part 2 of our 2021 Silph Arena Preseason Primer. You can go listen to part 1 of our Preseason Primer, which is already up on podcast services and on YouTube and Twitch. I guess you can rewatch on Twitch.
Yep.
Let me see. Let me actually pull up the particular date for that. I should probably grab, since we don't have numbered episodes, let me grab the date for that episode list. That is August 27th. Battle Science Podcast for August 27th, the Silph Arena Preseason Primer. Go listen to that. That is episode 1. There's a lot of content to cover. We'll cover the rest of it here in this bonus episode and then be back on Tuesday for our regularly scheduled Battle Science Podcast with all of the updates from Silph Arena. No.
Yep, we got a new announcement.
Well, we've got a soon announcement from the new Silph Arena,
Right.
but from Go Battle League. Go Battle League season, is it 9?
We're on 9. We're in 9 now, yes.
We're in 9 now. Move updates.
Oh, yeah.
Move updates. That's all I can think of.
Some nerfs, some changes. Pidgeot's back. Bird Jesus.
And then some GBL infos. We'll talk all about that. And then sort of probably some speculation on Silph Arena Season 4.
Yep.
Oh, goodness gracious. But before we get into that, I want to thank our Patreon producers, podcast producers. You too can join this list. Go to patreon.com/battlescience and back us at the $5 tier or higher. And you can get your name read on the air just like Dolphin93, Evo Stevo, Winston the Champ, and Jamar. Thank you for backing us on Patreon at the podcast producer level. You can also back us on Patreon at the $1 tier or more and get access to the Battle Science After Dark podcast, which is where Jesse and I unfiltered. I was going to make a joke about like unfiltered coffee or unfiltered juice with like grains and bits.
We get
Maybe some
schnasty.
pulp. There's some pulp in that episode. Yeah. No added calcium, but all the pulp.
We go off the rails. We kind of talk about anything and everything.
Yep.
We don't have a filter. It's meant to be where we can just kind of let loose and say all the fun flavor text that we like.
Yes, while the regularly scheduled Battle Science podcasts and bonus podcasts that go up on all podcast services are for all people of all ages. The Battle Science After Dark podcast is listener discretion advised. So you can go catch that for a $1 tier or more over on patreon.com/battlescience. We'll have one coming up here in the next week or two for September. don't know what we're going to talk about. I feel like I had a thought for a topic the other day, and then it wisped out of my head, and we'll get back to it later. But over to the preseason primer. Let's jump right on into this. There are no time codes. We are on this train. It has no brakes.
So for those of you who are turning in for the first time or listening,
go listen to the previous episode first.
Yeah,
If this is your first episode, stop, pull over to the side of the road, go back to the previous episode.
This is
Listen to
part
that.
2.
This is part 2 of all of the sequels. Don't start with this one. Even though this isn't a sequel, this is part.
Oh no! Keep going.
Whatever.
My screen went dark, and on the tablet, you know how fun that is to turn back on.
Oh boy! So we talked a lot about individual Pokemon in the previous episode and PvP, some of the very basics.
Like why you should PvP. Why would you want to PvP?
Some of the, just sort of top level. This is going to be a little bit more in-depth on the battle side. That's why it's part 2 battle basics. So we're going to talk about a little bit more in-depth on battling and the mechanics and a little bit of team building and a couple of other little topics here and there. So let's jump into it. Part 2, we're going to start with some battle basics. If you jump into a GBL battle, a battle against the team leaders, into a battle against one of your friends, you might know or might not know some of the basic sort of mechanics. The one thing that it doesn't show here on this screenshot, and if you're an audio listener, I would recommend going over to the video and listen to the watching the video version of this, because we'll have some nice pictures sort of showing. We've got a nice slideshow with some pictures and some bullet points to help break stuff down. We're looking at a screenshot of a battle here with two Pokemon, a Vulpix versus a Dugong. Semantics as far as who's going to win, whatever. The one thing that it doesn't show here that is actually rather important is that there is a 4-minute battle timer. When the battle starts and you see the go flash on screen, that 4-minute timer starts counting down. I believe, what did you say, it was within the last 30 seconds or so is when the timer...
I think roughly within the last minute to 30 seconds, the timer will show up there in the center of the screen.
It'll show up. Yep, the top center, it'll show up a little timer. There are teams that are built for stall purposes, so basically they're not incredibly strong, but they are incredibly bulky. They are absolute behemoths with massive amounts of defense and stamina that are built to run that clock out, which can be a tactic, not something we'll really cover here because it's rather cheesy and not incredibly beneficial, especially with how the gameplay plays within Pokemon Go PvP. The other thing that you probably already know, it's 3 Pokemon versus 3 Pokemon. You pick 3, your opponent picks 3, and then you battle against each other. The switch timer, when you go to switch from one Pokemon to another, this is not when a Pokemon faints. You have a 1-minute timer. Once you've selected the Pokemon to switch in and it has been switched in, you'll have 60 seconds on a cooldown before you can switch again. The one thing is that picking a replacement upon the fainting of a Pokemon does not affect that timer. So even if you switch into something and you're, say, 30 seconds in, and your Pokemon that you've brought out faints, that 30-second timer continues. But just because you have 30 seconds left on your switch timer doesn't mean you can't throw a new Pokemon out.
And competitively speaking, the switch timer is one of the key factors in your battling because it plays a very crucial element to the mechanics of a battle. So just, if anything in this takeaway, timers are important, knowing your timers.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that you'll probably see here is that there are 2 shields each. These block all damage of a charge move, and we'll get to the breakdown of the different moves here in a moment. The 2 shields will block all damage, but any buff or debuff effects will still apply. So even if, say, a power-up punch is blocked, the damage is blocked, but the attack boost for whichever Pokemon used power-up punch will still be in effect.
The same thing for a debuff, like with Dugong in the image here. Even if Steven were to shield the Icy Wind from Dugong, it would still apply the debuff to attack.
To my attack.
Yes.
Yes. The biggest takeaway with this screen and the overall mechanics of Pokemon Go PvP is that PvP is a resource management game. It's like a real-time strategy. So a much faster paced and considerably less units than, say, what's it called? AoE.
Age of Empires?
Age of Empires. Basically.
It's a very elaborate comparison. But
yes. So it's trying to think of another more.
I mean, if you
common
compare
examples.
it to something like the main series Pokemon games, you don't get to pause between attacks.
Yes.
You have to keep going.
Yeah. That's why it's real time versus turn based.
Right.
Although technically there are turns, and we'll get into that here in the next slide or two. So it's a resource management game. So you have to manage your shields, the amount of Pokemon you have left, your shield timer, and in some instances, depending on the composition of yours and your opponent's team, you'll have to manage the battle timer as well, and then as well as energy for each fast moves, energy generation, and charge moves, energy consumption. But we will start getting into that here. So, fast moves. A Pokemon will always have one fast move. A Pokemon cannot not have a fast move. It always has a fast move. Every Pokemon species have different fast move options. Some Pokemon, actually many Pokemon, share similar fast moves, but not every Pokemon has the availability of every fast move.
Right.
They are used in battle by tapping on the screen anywhere except for the charge move bubbles, basically. Although the charge move, if you don't have a charge move ready to throw, you can still tap there. Anywhere on screen, it'll hit a fast move. Using the fast move will do damage and gain energy. I'll just finish reading these bullet points, then we'll get into sort of the in-depth. The fast moves operate within quote-unquote turns. So this is sort of, it's real time, but it's based on turns. Each turn, quote-unquote turn, are half of a second long. Not every fast move is created equal. Tackle is bad. Pound is a little bit better. I'm trying to think of what's another normal fast move that's okay.
Takedown?
Takedown is okay. Because it's a Vine Whip.
Vine Whip clone. Yep. And when we say clone, what we mean is certain moves have the same energy, damage, and cooldown as other moves. They're just coded. They're named different to work the same way.
Mm. So let's break down a little bit of damage, energy gain, and Jesse said cooldown. I'm going to refer to it as turn duration.
Okay.
You'll probably hear different people call it different things, and that's
where PvP can get confusing because the terminology can vary between player and player.
Yes. So different fast moves. There's 3 main things that can affect the viability of a fast move. It's turn duration. How long is the attack animation? Basically, how many fast attacks can you get in a period of time? The energy generation of that attack. So how much energy does it gain you to be able to throw a charge move? And then the amount of damage that each of its fast attacks do. And so I guess gold standard if you've listened to any of the previous podcasts, gold standard is counter. It is the
fast move counter.
The fast move counter. It is a fighting type, and it is a very fast move. It has, I think is it a half turn?
I'm not 100% sure.
I think it's just half a second. It's either half a second or a second. It's an incredibly rapid hitting fast move. It does a significant amount of damage. I guess that's 3. It does a significant amount of damage every time it hits.
Yep.
And because it hits as quickly as it does, that adds up. And then its energy gain is pretty solid as well.
Yeah.
Which means,
of all the fast moves, it is the most... I mean, some people would argue it's not balanced, but we've had the argument that if it was ever changed, buffed, debuffed, reworked, cooldown, turn duration increased, or anything, that it would completely throw the meta, or what we know of competitive, into chaos.
Pokemon Go, the bedrock on which the Pokemon Go meta is placed upon is counter as a fast move. Now, you could also say that things like Confusion and Charm also sort of help fill in that bedrock. But I would say counter is, bar none, the most important.
I mean, if you look at all of the rankings and everything, anything that does have access to counter is usually incredibly relevant in PvP. Even Pokemon that have terrible stats are still relevant just because counter is such a good move. Like, I'm trying to think of something that has counter that's not good, and it's maybe Hitmonchan, but still has its place.
Yeah. I think, what is it? Breloom?
Okay.
Counter?
That might be the exception.
Breloom's probably the one. And we actually... Breloom is actually something we talked about in the first part of this, as far as being a counter user that's not all that great. And that's just because its stats are all right. Let's see. So different fast moves have different play. Counter is sort of that bedrock. It's that gold standard as far as moves. There are fast moves that don't gain as much energy, are a little bit longer as far as duration, but then also have significantly more damage. So you're looking at things like Charm and Confusion. They all start with the letter C, which is a little bit odd.
Yeah, it's true.
Is that?
I got this.
Okay. It's a little bizarre. Let's see. Okay, so you want to strike a good balance where counter basically is like A or A plus in all 3 categories of energy generation, damage, and low turn duration. Things like Charm are an A in damage, but are like A plus, if not A star in damage, are lacking in the turn duration and the energy gain. You're going to see completely different performance from a Pokemon that has counter versus, say, Confusion, or like if you're looking at polar opposites, let's compare Snarl to Charm. And actually, probably a pretty good baseline is if you have Liepard, because it has, I was going to say, Snarl and Charl.
The ongoing joke.
It has Snarl and it has Charm. So, and I haven't talked about sort of the category that Snarl is in. Snarl is high energy gain, low damage, and a nice medium turn duration. So where Charm is a longer duration, Snarl is a little bit less, but has a much higher energy gain. So
Charm has more damage.
Charm has more damage, but Snarl has more energy gain. But Snarl is also a little bit less in the turn duration, so you get to it a little bit quicker.
I would say you get maybe 1.5 to 2 snarls in the duration of one charm.
Mm-hmm. And I'd have to go back into the particular stats to be granular here, and if Eric BN will probably correct us if we're absolutely wrong. In the past, I said takedown was a terrible move, and it's a normal type move, and it's not that great.
But if of the normal moves that are available, it's probably the more preferable.
It's a Vine Whip clone, so it's got reasonable energy gain.
Yeah.
But Liepard is an interesting gauge to sort of see the two big sort of shifting points of high damage versus high energy gain. So
we're not saying Liepard's good.
No, but it does have
it's got
snarl
the options,
and it does
moves.
have charm, so you can use it. You can switch that fast move on the same Pokemon and see the differences in how it plays out.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of another Pokemon that has that kind of option, and I don't know if there is one.
Granbull. Okay,
Granbull does too. That's right.
HR is getting bored.
A little grumbly. The things that join Snarl are Bullet Seed as a grass type, and there's another one, isn't there?
Is it Waterfall?
No. As far as energy generation, I think there's another move or two that have a similar energy generation
for the duration. I'm not exactly sure.
I think those are the two primary, and the hilarious thing is Shiftry has both.
Yeah.
The interesting sort of like middle ground is something like Confusion, but even Confusion is maybe a little bit too long to really hit that pinpoint. Confusion has pretty reasonable energy gain for its duration and can hit like a truck, but it is a little bit longer. It's not quite as long turn duration than it as it's a push notification for Worlds.
Oh, for Silph Arena?
Yeah. Worlds prelims, I think. Confusion's not as long of a duration as Charm is.
Right, but visually it feels like it.
Yes, it feels like it hits like an eternity. Go play some Hypno. Confusions take a long time.
But they do a good amount of damage. Confusion and Charm are one of those. Both of them are both moves that benefit the Shadow Pokemon type, and that's something that we've mentioned before. Hypno in particular, it can be a particularly good Shadow. How many times can I say particular? Because it is bulky, and it trades some of that bulkiness with the Shadow for the increase to attack, and it still maintains the tank type Pokemon, but also gets that nice big damage buff for Confusions, and they start to stack up really quick.
Mm-hmm.
I guess to kind of give a bar for this, moves like Dragon Breath and Water Gun are the fastest moves in the game. After that, I would say probably Counter?
Yes.
And then Snarl, then Confusion, then Charm being the longest duration. Now, each of those are doing different amounts of damage, different amounts of energy gain, and all have different durations. If you really want to crack down on those different things, you can either playtest them for yourself, or there's websites out there like PvPoke and other resources that we'll mention here at the end, where you can also just Google it, but knowing your durations for your fast moves can play a huge part in PvP, because if you're going to use, let's say, Confusion on Hypno, I can get in at least 4 to 5 Dragon Breaths while you're doing one Confusion.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean much, because I'm doing about the same amount of damage with the Dragon Breaths, but I'm not getting the same amount of energy that you are in your one Confusion. So that's kind of the mix and match of knowing what Pokemon are using what moves and how quickly they're getting energy for their charge moves. And I think that's a good kind of segue into the next part where we talk about charge moves.
Yes. So similar to fast moves, every Pokemon will have at least one charge move. Every Pokemon has different charge move options. You can add a second charge move to a Pokemon for an additional cost. We talked about that in the first part.
Yep. The costs and the species having different prices for their second move.
Mm-hmm. Charge moves are used in battle by tapping the attack bubble on the bottom of the screen. So in this particular example, I have Swampert against a Magcargo. The Hydro Cannon has a full charge plus a little bit of extra energy, whereas the Sludge Wave does not. The Hydro Cannon bubble, if I tap on that, it will go into its charge move animation, and it will fire off a charge move. Using a charge move will do damage. It will consume the energy and will apply buffs or debuffs depending on the move. The one thing to note is some moves, not all, there's a subsection of charge moves that have a buff or debuff. There's then a subsection of that have a guaranteed buff or debuff, so a 100% chance to do a buff or debuff, while others have a percentage chance. So something like Ancient Power has, I think, a 10% chance when it's used in battle to increase attack and defense by
2 stages.
And there's a maximum of 3 stages. That's a little more
So in
complex.
the main series, something like Tail Whip from early on in their Pokemon games decreased defense by 1 stage. In the main series games, there were originally 4 stages, but now there's 6. Yeah,
yes.
It's not incredibly important information, but in Pokemon Go, that translates to 3 stacks of either attack and defense, plus or minus.
So if I use a power-up punch, I get an attack buff by 1 stage.
And power-up punch, as an example, is 100% guaranteed.
Yes.
Every time you use it, your attack will go up by 1 stage.
So if I use power-up punch 3 times, I will have my attack buffed 3 times to the maximum. If I use a 4th power-up punch, I don't see an attack increase, but the damage of power-up punch will have increased because of each attack buff.
Correct. One thing to note, if you have a buff or debuff on you and you swap a Pokemon out, it removes that buff or bane.
That is, yep. It's a little bit awkward, so if a Pokemon has been affected by buffs, they all zero out when they are put back into a Pokeball and a new Pokemon is sent out.
Yep.
Let's see. So charge moves can be shielded by an opponent if they have shields remaining. The shield does block the damage. It does not block the buff or debuff. And not every charge move is created equal. So similar to fast moves, charge moves don't have durations in this particular instance. Charge moves have damage and the energy requirement. The energy requirement, the less energy that a charge move has, the faster you can fire it off, but usually the less damage it has. I think the one memeiest example is getting beamed. So something like Solar Beam or Hyper Beam
they are the strongest moves in the game, but also require the most energy.
Yes. So it takes forever to get to them. They can be easily avoided if they're shielded. But if they hit unshielded, even with resistances, they do a mac ton of damage. And thus results in the meme get beamed.
Yeah. Because for the longest time, context, Azumarill is a pain in the butt. In PvP, people would actually run things like Ninetales with Solar Beam, and it would get the match flipped because the Azu would be dead in a case where it should have won against a fire type like Kanto Ninetales, but then it gets #getbeamed, and Azu saw the light.
Let's see. So actually, the Toxicroak here also shows an interesting comparison between. So Counter is its fast move, and then it has 2 charge moves. It has Sludge Bomb and it has Mud Bomb. Sludge Bomb, as you can see, has 2 bars, and Mud Bomb has 3 bars. So
to be fair, you are looking at on gyms and raids tabs, so it's a little different.
it's true. Is Sludge Bomb 3 bars in?
No.
Okay, it's still 2 bar.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
I mean, the difference is also if, let's say, if it does not, but if Mud Bomb was something that debuffed, in the PvP section on the screen here, it shows the percentage of the debuff. If it has a percent, it shows the percent. If it's a guaranteed buff or debuff, it shows it under that screen under the PvP stats.
I'll try to remember to switch out the screenshot then before this goes up. So Sludge Bomb requires a bit more energy, but it's going to do a little bit more damage than Mud Bomb. But Mud Bomb you can get to much quicker. We refer to that as spam.
Yeah. And one thing to take into consideration here in looking at Toxicroak, it is both fighting and poison type. So it is getting what's called stab, same type ability bonus, which is going to give it an increase to damage with both counter and Sludge Bomb, where Mud Bomb, it won't get the bonus because it's a ground type, but it's still, because it has a high base attack stat, like we mentioned in the last episode, it's an attack-weighted Pokemon, so the more times you can fire off a move, sometimes can determine the win, because if I'm hitting you hard already, and I'm hitting you 3 or 4 times faster with Mud Bombs than getting to 1 Sludge Bomb, I'm going to do more damage overall. It also creates what we call shield pressure, because if I'm spamming Mud Bomb at you, you need to decide, oh, is this worth shielding or not? But with Toxicroak, it can add up pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I go to launch a Sludge Bomb, there's a chance you shield it. But if I'm assailing you with Mud Bombs, you're going to have to shield at some point.
The more charge moves you throw, the more opportunities it is to use that shield. So,
your opponent shields.
Yes.
But another thing, it also helps run the timer for switching. Because when you go to do your charge animations, it's technically delaying the clock. The clock is still going. The cooldowns for swaps, the game clock itself is still going.
But no damage is happening yet.
Right. And it also prevents your opponent from using fast moves when you use a charge move.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think you have mentioned it yet, but every charge move in the game, based on the type, has a certain animation effect that goes with it. And there are some of them where, and I think you'll go into this here in a minute about, or later at some point, about how you don't have to hit every bubble. But each of the...
It's more of, I wouldn't say it's an advanced strat, but I wasn't going to go like super in depth.
Right. But for right now, the little bubble mini games that you get, so like in this instance where he has Swampert on the screen, Hydro Cannon would be a left to right wave motion for the water type, and a lot of the types actually fit to the aesthetic of the little mini game that you have to do. But the general consensus for most of these charge moves is just spin your finger in a circle in the center of the screen, and you'll pretty much get all of them. If you're just starting out, I would suggest doing the spinning of a circle in the center of the screen, because the majority of the charge animations when you use a charge attack all share the same kind of animation. But as you progress, or if you're an experienced player, you know, kind of learn the patterns for the types.
The team leaders are available to battle at any point in time. That's not server based or anything. You can immediately queue up against the AI of the team leaders, so you can practice your animations there.
One key thing to note is they have kind of hidden the leaders. You have to open up your menu, go to battle, and then underneath all of the Go Battle League stuff at the very bottom is the 3 team leaders.
Yep, scroll down to the very bottom, and there's your 3 team leaders.
And you can fight them at either Great League, Ultra League, or Master League.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just starting, I would recommend Master League. That way you can use Pokemon that you already have powered up from raiding.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. And then the one, not every charge move is created equal. Similar to fast moves where there are bad fast moves, there are bad charge moves.
Yeah.
Trying to think of a good example.
Of a bad charge move?
Yeah.
Aurora Beam is not great. Is a nice type move. Certain moves have certain benefits, but they're not as bad as the fast moves.
Yeah.
Charge moves have a little bit more flexibility. Flame Wheel is kind of bad, like on a lone Marowak. It's not great. But the nice thing about charge moves is most people, if they see a Pokemon, assume it's running the optimal moves. So you can run those cheese move sets and still do fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I run on the Shadow Ampharos, and most people just assume I run Volt Switch, Thunder Punch. I can't tell you in the last week when I've been doing GBL how many times I've seen either an Umbreon, an Ice type, or like a G Stunfisk thrown against my Ampharos because it's a ground. The Stunfisk, for example, would beat me because it's a ground type.
Mm-hmm.
But I get enough energy from Volt Switch, my fast move, quick enough to build up to something like a Focus Blast, and it doesn't get shielded, and that just destroys the G Stunfisk, the Umbreons, the Bastiodons, because they don't respect that I have that move. So just because it's not the most optimal move doesn't mean you can't invest in off moves, but that you have to. There's mechanics that go into that to like baiting.
There's decisions that have to go into that. That's what we call spice.
Yeah, spice.
So, and we've got a little bit of a reference to that in a later slide. Okay, team building. Team building.
Are you bouncing around here? Because we're missing some slides.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, I hid a handful of slides because they're very dense, and I tried to pare down the information.
Okay. 'Cause I'm not seeing the same thing.
Yeah, I think there's a slide or two probably that are hidden. I'm
You're
trying
fine.
to pare down the information. Team building is a can of worms that we try and tackle generally when a new meta is announced on the Battle Science podcast, on a regularly scheduled Battle Science podcast, because each meta is different. There are metas where your top tier performers aren't going to be available. There are metas where your top performers are available, but you can't run a team of 6 top performers. You have to support like one. Like you can't run Defense Deoxys, Azumarill, or Umbreon. You have to run one of the 3 and then support it with a team of 5 around that. So team building is always this big can of worms that you only get to open up and mess with when a meta has been announced.
Right.
So
and we've discussed meta before. Meta is the term that we use for what is relevant in a given scenario.
Mm-hmm. The biggest modifier to each meta is what Pokemon do you have ready and available.
Yep.
What do you have? If you don't have any Defense Deoxys, you can't build a team around Defense Deoxys.
No.
You can't use it.
You got to find something else.
So it's really a matter of knowing what you have and knowing what you're comfortable with and then building around that. The next bullet point here is what's your budget. You might have something available, but it's going to cost a lot.
Yep.
You could have, the rank 1 XL or rank 1 that with XL required, Metacham, but you don't have the XL candy for it. Or maybe you do have the XL candy for it, but it's a level 1 and it needs all of the power-ups.
All of the Stardust.
You have to then decide, are you going to spend that Stardust now on this Pokemon that in the case of Metacham, it'll probably come back in relevance. Do you power it up now and have it for later? Or is something you're powering up like a rank 2 Alolan Executor? Do you want to spend the Stardust on that Stardust candy to second move, all of the resources on it when it's not going to be relevant in the future?
Yeah.
So you have to look at your options and budget.
And not to mention, if you're doing something like GBL or a Silph Arena and you only have the resources to power up a Metacham and then you don't have enough for anything else, you have to balance out the team.
Mm-hmm.
So one example when we first started doing Silph Arena was we quickly realized how much of an investment in Stardust every month a different meta was going to be. One month was fire, water, grass. Okay, cool. I maxed out Charizard, Blastoise, and Venusaur. Well, next month it's ghost, flying, and electric. I don't have enough Stardust to do anything with those. So one thing I would recommend is when you go to do team building, make sure you can power up those Pokemon to that point and that you have the TMs to get the optimal moves that you want for the fast attack and the charge attack. And then, if you have enough resources left over, then unlock a second move. That's one strategy.
It's looking at what you have already powered up, contemplating that in a team composition versus what you don't have powered up and would have to spend additional resources on,
Right.
to have to power up to put a team together. So
and that's one of the FOMO issues that we deal with every month during these Silph Arena metas, because if Steven has a rank 1 Metacham XL, but then has a rank 200 at level 47 already powered up and second moved, he doesn't really need to go and invest in that rank 1 right now. He can just use the rank 200 or whatever that he has until he feels comfortable powering up that other one.
I think I have like a rank probably 300 of this. It's because of the XL change.
Yeah.
I probably have somewhere around a rank 300 or so at like level 39 or something.
Right, prior to when the rework happened.
It's a near hundo. And then I got a new Metacham that's rank 3 as Best Buddy. It's rank 2 or 3 at Best Buddy that I don't have the XL candy for. So that in the meantime, I have this other Metacham
that you can
that
use.
I can use as I grind for the XL candy by
Right.
walking it as my buddy.
So part of team building comes down to resource management for sure.
It's both in-game and both team building and within the battle, it's resource management.
Yeah.
What's your play style? So I put this down as as a bullet point because in my case, I have a particular play style that works for me and that has only worked for me, only been able to work for me once. And that was it Prismatic Cup that I tied for first with 3 other people?
That's the one you have a badge for.
Yeah. I don't remember.
Prismatic.
Prismatic Cup, where I was able to build.
Which, for reference, is a Silph Arena meta.
Yes, it was a Silph Arena meta of this past season. I was able to build the Lardy Boys, which is basically a pun on Team Fat. Big, chunky stamina and defense-weighted Pokemon that I did not have to worry too much about my shield usage because they could take the punishment. I was able to perform well because that bulk allowed me to rely less on shield management and feel more comfortable in matchups of my Pokemon versus my opponent's Pokemon. I can outlast. I can outbulk. That is a meta that is a play style that is not available in every meta because, especially Silph metas, because Silph will change up the way that you have to build a team around. And so as much as I wanted to continue using that kind of team, all of the rest of the metas for
the rest of
the season basically barred me from using a similar team.
Yeah, I think for that month in particular, the theme was every Pokemon on your team had to represent a different color of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So you had red, you had blue, green and white, yellow, or no, it was yellow and white, green was its own color, black and purple were a color, and that's 5. What was 6?
Was it like red and brown?
Pink and brown.
Pink and brown? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird.
And the way that worked was whatever the Pokemon's actual color was. So, for example, Hitmonchan fit into the pink and brown category, whereas something like Blastoise fit into the blue.
Mm-hmm. Let me see if I can pull up the team.
But then the next month, the meta could be something completely different, where you have to pick Pokemon based on a point-based system,
mm-hmm.
where each Pokemon had an individual point value, and you had 20 points to spend, and you had to fill a roster of 6 with 20 points. But that's the fun thing about Silph Cups is they're thematic and it changes every month, which can be a double-edged sword because if you don't have the resources, it's hard to keep up with the different cups. But with GBL, you can just run whatever. Granted, there are conditional cups in GBL as well.
Let's see. Prismatic Cup. It's loading it. Yep.
So while you're checking, or do you have it?
Yes.
Okay.
5-way tie. And it was, let's see, was it just the 4 rounds? I think I went 3-1.
So you won
3
3 of
wins.
your games and you lost 1 of them.
Yes.
Or rounds, I should say.
Yes. And
because
so
each round was the best of 3.
my team was Lantern, I think, which was blue.
Yep, that's your blue category.
Sunny Cast Form, which was red.
Yep.
Hypno, which was in yellow-white.
Yep.
Snorlax, which classified as
Green.
Yep. Cherim, Sunshine Form, which classified, I believe, as pink.
Yep.
And then Driftblim, which classified as
Purple and gray.
Purple and gray. So I ran stuff with a significant amount of...
The green was green and black. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because actually I think Snorlax technically classifies as black.
Yeah.
Because of its sprites from the original game.
Yep.
So you have to determine your playstyle, what's going to perform well for you.
Like for Steven, he played a bulky defensive so he could play smart and safe and calculate what his opponents are doing. Where like someone like me, I'm running into GBL with 3 shadows and going ham.
Yes. And that's actually brings us to the next bullet point here of to spice or not to spice. And that is, do you want to play with something that's a little less known? Do you want to play with something that is a little bit more risky, that maybe isn't as strong, but has maybe very advantageous matchups against a smaller population of relevant Pokemon? So the spice factor, there are spice masters out there. There's always a spice factor. Actually, Silph Arena each season will give you a spice ranking.
Yep.
On how your team compositions are in comparison to
the rest of the people that are playing, whatever other people are using for that cup.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using something like a Zapdos in a cup where Zapdos would not do well, and you do well with Zapdos, you will get a higher spice ranking. Whereas if you're someone that just follows what everybody else runs, your spice ranking will not be as high.
Mm-hmm.
But that's limited to Silph Arena. You can also look up, there are specific content creators and YouTubers and Pokemon Go players out there, PvPers, #battlers, that only use the spiciest of picks. And I think the only one that comes to mind when I think of Spice Master, I'm going to forget his name. Give me a minute. I feel bad. He's going to hate me.
Oh, yeah. How am I blanking on his name? He's not been AFK, but he hasn't been around.
He's been hanging out with Funshine Cat.
Yes. Let's see.
I feel really bad. He's going to have to give us crap now.
Is he maybe not in our server anymore?
Maybe not.
I don't see him. Did he retire from Pokemon Go PvP?
No.
He's
part of the X3DX clan. I feel really bad.
Jim Corn.
Jim Corn. That's what it was.
Jim Corn was Yep. J-Mar's in the chat. My guy Jim Corn. Yeah, you got us. Jim Corn is J-Mar, correct me, did he retire? I don't think I heard anything about him retiring, but
he's world traveling with Funshine.
He is a spice master. If you want to see content of some of the weirdest stuff that comes out, even things that realistically aren't relevant, I believe Jay Formakis and Scrublord Dustin do daily videos on some of the weird stuff that comes out. So even like base forms, they do videos on like the stuff that really isn't even relevant.
King IV will also go and do crazy combinations of teams just to prove that the Pokemon are still viable.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how you use them.
JMR saying that he still plays, but taking it a bit casual. I don't blame anyone for taking it casual. Okay. Next slide.
Did you mention the 4 categories there?
No. Different Pokemon perform differently in different roles, and we briefly mentioned roles in the first part of this. When it comes to battles, the 3 Pokemon you pick, there's basically 3 different
categories, roles.
Well, there's more than just 3, but you have Pokemon that perform well in different scenarios. Excuse me. So you have your leads. Basically, the first Pokemon you throw out is your lead. Similar, I guess, in naming scheme to things like relay races. You have your lead, your first Pokemon you send out. Usually you want something with rather good coverage or something that's going to be versatile. Hopefully it's not something that's going to be hard countered by things commonly, where you're going to have to force, you either lose the matchup or you have to switch out, giving your opponent basically the upper hand.
Assuming they have an answer to whatever you send in.
True. Picking out a good lead can be kind of hard, but sometimes it's good to just go in with something that is either incredibly spammy, has some good neutral damage to a lot of things, so something like maybe a normal type.
I think one of the most popular leads that we've had for a long time was Alolan Raichu.
Yes.
Because it created energy, it gained energy very quickly. It gave itself the upper hand very quickly. And because it has 2 moves that you either have to guess right or wrong on, and if you guess wrong, you get punished.
Mm-hmm. And then there's just good neutralists, I think, in this image. Altaria is actually a pretty good pick. It has decent bulk. Dragon Breath is nothing to sneeze at. It has Sky Attack. It has the options of Moonblast or
Sky Attack. Oh, Dragon Pulse is the other one.
Dragon Pulse is the other one. Although I don't know if Dragon Pulse is really getting used anymore.
Yeah.
Altaria performs very well.
It's just in Open Great League now. It fears all of the Azu and Charmers.
Mm-hmm. You have your closers, which are basically the exact opposite of leads, things that have pretty reasonable bulk and can do a nice chunk of damage when all of your shields, when your opponent's shields are gone. Things that can survive and do massive damage to basically finish out a fight.
Yep.
Your attackers, best Pokemon against shielded opponents, while you are unshielded. So things that have high bulk, high survivability, have higher, things that can have higher spam and can do considerable amounts of damage. So,
the attackers can play either a lead or closer role because they can also apply great pressure for something like Swampert or Medicham is a very versatile Pokemon. It can run Power Up Punch to shield bait, or it can run Dynamic Punch to just nuke things.
Mm-hmm. With having Ice Punch to be able to help deal with
its weaknesses.
Mm-hmm. And then defenders. Defenders are usually bulkier Pokemon. So in this graphic, there is Lantern, Fortress, and Vigoroth that all perform well. They can take some damage. They can dish some damage.
Yep.
They might be a little bit slower in the energy gain, but they have
the stamina and bulk to sustain themselves in a fight.
Mm-hmm.
They are what we would call a safe switch or a safe swap because in particular, Lantern is really only weak to ground and grass.
Mm-hmm.
It is still vulnerable to electric neutrally because it is also a water. Vigoroth is really only weak to fighters and flyers because its movesets don't really give it an option to beat fighters. If it ever gets Rock Slide, watch out. But and then Fortress is kind of one of those odd ones. I don't know many people that use Fortress, but Fortress is an example of something that has a lot of versatility. It's got debuff moves. It's got huge nuke moves. When I say nuke, we're talking about things like Solar Beam and Hyper Beam that just destroy something if it's not respected. But those three in particular also offer a good amount of versatility. So if you get a bad matchup in the lead and swap into one of these, there's a 50-50 chance your opponent has a counter to it, but it's a good one that you can safely swap into because they have the stamina and the bulk to help regain the fight.
Okay, best of 3 battles format. So Silph Arena, GBL, you don't encounter this, but within the Silph Arena, it is the best of 3 battles. Whoever wins 2 battles first wins the round. So you won game 1, now what? So this is another interesting one within team building as well, that there is some additional strategy. And actually, I'm kind of surprised we haven't mentioned the phrase that I used to love saying, that Pokemon Go PvP is a chess match that starts even before you hit play, because the team building can be incredibly
critical to how you perform.
Yes, team building is incredibly critical, and all of that happens before you even basically start a tournament. The meta is announced. You look at what you have available. You start theory crafting and formulating a team and all.
I mean, I can think of 10 people off my head that'll see a meta and then make 5 or 6 different teams and play test them until they have one they like.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, last minute before we actually start a tournament, go, wait, I want to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
I've been guilty of that.
So in a best of 3 battles, you have to remember you're playing against another human being. And so just as you can change your team up or stick with the same team, so can they. So if you won game 1, do you stick with that same team of 3? Does that still perform optimally? I'm just hearing something else. Does that team of 3 still perform optimally? Are you going to mix it up so that it has you can potentially catch your opponent on their back foot?
Or do they reverse psychology you and catch you out, assuming that, because you won this, you're going to keep the same team, whereas if most people lose the round, they end up changing their team the next round because, that didn't work, let me try this.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a game of psychology at that point because is this person known to change it up every time they lose? And that's kind of the thing with Silph tournaments that we see when we host these is you start recognizing patterns with players. And I'm one of those players that I like to mix up my team every round.
Mm.
And I've won a couple tournaments because I ran the same team all 3 rounds.
Mm.
And I know certain opponents will remember that of me, and I'll play that to my advantage. But sometimes that doesn't play to my advantage because they catch me out going, I won, I'm just going to keep the same team.
JMR in the chat says the best mind games are no mind games.
Yes.
So sometimes you just want to play what you're confident in.
You're comfortable. And that's a big thing we always talk about too, is you may have a team of 6, but this is a meta maybe where you don't have 3 things that you don't have any idea how they work or perform, but the other 3 you have played with in GBL, you've played with in other metas before.
Mm-hmm.
You're comfortable. They're good, solid rotation. Just run them.
And then there's a matchup to matchup where your opponent's team might counter, 2 of your 6 incredibly well.
Yeah.
Where you just don't want to use those 2
because
of
you
your
know
6.
that if you do, you'll give them an advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a lot of preparing ahead of time. It's studying. It's in some cases knowing your opponents.
And that's not to say that everyone's going to have the same team. You can't be prepared for everything. You got to just do the best you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's incredibly important. There are going to be times where you just aren't. Your team has a weakness to this specific team, and there's maybe a couple of win scenarios if you play your heart out and
you catch them out on a good move or a good swap.
Mm-hmm. But there are going to be times where you're just in a losing scenario, and
It just happens.
It sucks when it happens when you see it before the battles have even started. You see your opponent's team, you look at your team, you're like, I don't have this.
Yeah,
there's no way I have this.
There's certain scenarios like with Swampert and Whiscash, if you don't have access to a grass type move, you're gonna have a bad time.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like a flyer that resists them.
Mm-hmm. So it is really a case by case basis. It's knowing Pokemon, playing to your strengths, knowing the matchups, etc. So,
and that's kind of thing we always talk about when we do these Silph Arena Cups or even GBL. Play with what you're comfortable with. Practice with certain Pokemon. Understand how they play, what they feel like, how long it takes to build up fast moves to their energy move. That's really, I think, the biggest thing here is don't play to play around the meta. Mm-hmm. Play with what you're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. We're on one of our last slides here with some closing points, some general points of importance as far as Pokemon Go PvP and life in general, I guess. Practice good sportsmanship. Don't be a sore loser. When we get back to in-person tournaments, shake people's hands, say good games.
Well, I don't know if we'll be back to shaking right away.
That's true. That's true. You're not wrong. Practice good sportsmanship, just like if you played sports back as a kid.
It's a real person on the other side of that screen.
Yeah. There's other human beings. Be respectful. So, practice. Keep practicing. Like, you're not going to get good just by sitting around doing nothing.
No. You can't jump into PvP and assume you'll have it right away.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you've done raids, just because you've battled gyms, just because you've done the Rockets, don't expect to become a champion overnight.
It does not mean that you are prepared for player versus player interactions.
No, it is not an easy ladder.
But don't forget to take breaks. You can play as much as you can. You will burn out. You will encounter issues. Take breaks. Even
in the tournaments, you're welcome to be like go up to the
tournament
runner,
organizer.
TO, thank you, tournament organizer, and just be like, hey, I need a minute to walk this out, relax, kind of unwind.
Yeah,
these are stressful. They, one of the things we mentioned in the last episode, CMP ties. I was doing a match last night in GBL where I had 2 Pokemon left and they had 1. Their last Pokemon came in and it was a Frostlass and had 2 Ice Shards or 2 Avalanches ready. Mm-hmm. I had my charge move ready, but because the way it works, it's not a swap in, it's a send in. They win the CMP tie because Frostlass beats Whiscash. Immediately get to fire their Avalanche. And the same with me. I send in my next Pokemon. I have a charge move ready, but because Frostlass has a higher attack, wins CMP again. So I had 2 Pokemon left that I could have instantly won if I got the charge move priority, but I didn't because Frostlass has the higher attack power, which gives it priority. I couldn't even get a fast move in. So just because you have all these conditions, you need to realize you're not going to win everything.
Recording your battles for review and study. There are plenty of apps out there, as well as built-in tools to both Samsung devices, Android devices, Apple devices. What are you giggling at?
Look at the last one.
Oh, yeah. You're getting ahead of yourself.
I know.
There are both built-in tools into devices as well as third-party apps that will allow you to record your battles. It is very important when it comes to Silph Arena tournaments. If there is server issues, desync, if the game crashes, you need recordings for it to prove that there was an issue.
Yep.
So that you can replay battles.
Yep.
So,
and that's one of the things that we have for our server and everybody that runs Silph Arena tournaments. In the rules, it says if you are unsure of your... in general, they say to record. Or if you can't record, ask your opponent to. Like, I know some people have phones that are not optimal for screen recording, you can always ask your opponent to record. Why are you giggling?
Kakuna Matata at the Portland Mega with a phone that has a micro USB plug-in.
We were scrambling to help find him a charger, and we're like, "What kind of phone do you have?"
No, he was.
No, it was the adapter for screen recording.
Yeah, he was on the. His battle was going to be streamed from one of the rounds of the Mega, and he was running such an old phone that was running a micro USB that
So one of the things we use for streaming for tournaments and for recording our matches are capture cards.
Mm-hmm.
A capture card is a device that you hook up to your computer, and most people, I think the original use for capture cards was for gaming consoles, as for one example. I want to say it was to capture camcorders.
Probably originally it was more of capturing camcorders, but also converting VHS tapes. Oh God, some kids are not going to know what we're talking about. Converting VHS tapes to a digital format.
Yeah. Basically, what it does is it copies whatever you have on a screen and puts it on your computer so you can digitally record it.
So the tools we use are direct, basically plug-in on the iPhone side. It is a lightning cable to HDMI, and then that HDMI plugs into a capture card on the computer. And then on Androids, it's a USB-C into an HDMI that then plugs into the capture card on the computer. Kakuna Matata, who runs PV Poke, was I guess I hope he's upgraded since. I really hope he's upgraded since, because the game is not skimping on the effects, and I cannot imagine it runs well. I mean, we know it doesn't run well because you're running some older phones in some instances too.
Yeah, even the charge animation's a struggle.
Yeah, his phone was a USB-C or a USB micro port, and so...
But that was a fun experience.
Not everyone's devices can run Pokemon Go and screen record at the same time.
Yeah.
Maybe consider getting a new phone, because at some point Pokemon Go is not going to support old devices.
But until that point, again, if you cannot screen record and it's something not you can do, you can ask your opponent to record in a self-match. But there are also content creators out there that do stream their games, and there are people that record their games. We do ours as well occasionally. Twitch is a great place to learn how to PvP. Go to the Pokemon Go category. I guarantee you at any time of the day, there is someone streaming PvP. Join us when we do streams for PvP, like Go Battle Nights. Jump in and ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions to the content creator. Some of them require a follow, but if you don't like their content, you can just unfollow them afterwards. But jump in, ask questions. You know, if there's someone that doesn't have people helping them or other mods or admins in chat, they might not respond to you right away because they're focused on their match. But I guarantee you, between matches, if you ask a question like, if they're running a Pokemon and you're like, oh, I've never seen that one before, does it perform well? Or just don't be afraid to ask questions, because that's what a lot of PvP is just learning. And I think that ties in with the practice.
Just don't constantly tag PV Poke and JRE Seawolf on Twitter. It's pretty cringe. Maybe you should just look at the resources that they provide on their websites. Similar to not forgetting to take breaks when it comes to practice, don't forget to file manage every once in a while with your battle recordeds. I think I cleared up something like 20 gigabytes of recorded GBL battles, or not GBL, Silph Arena battles from my phone one day, because I was like, my phone seems to have quite a bit of storage taken up. I wonder why. And then I'm like, oh, wow, these are all recorded
10 gigs of video.
Yes. So I deleted those and cleared up some space. So
Jim's asking what's the best recording for iPhone. Jamar has answered that he uses the built-in recording feature on iPhone.
Yes.
I'm not incredibly familiar with iPhone. I know that they do have, some of the newer devices do have the under settings. It's a screen recorder function.
I have some knowledge. I believe it's the 10, 11, and 12, or so the X, iPhone X series, the 11 series, and the 12 series should have the, I don't think they call it specifically the toolbox feature, but if you go to your network and battery sort of icons on your top right of your screen. You can swipe down from there, and you have like your Wi-Fi setting, your Bluetooth setting, flashlight, etc. You should have a screen recording option there on the toolbox. So
Also, a note, because we have seen this before, if you do screen recording and you are doing PvP, do not disturb is a recommended function.
well, if you're streaming your battles, if you want to showcase your battles later, do not disturb is not a bad option to turn on.
Not to mention if you have personal information being texted to you and you have pop-ups. It's just, if you want to share that information, if you want to share the videos, make sure you have do not disturb or turn off pop-up notifications, because there'll be times where your roommate texts you and it's not something appropriate and it pops up on stream, and that turns into a fun situation.
That sounds pretty specific. And then the final point here in the closing points is Niantic servers are just going to be bad. It's what some people call Go Battle Lag, GBL. Niantic servers are pretty well known for not being well optimized. It's certainly more playable than, say, Nintendo's servers for Smash Brothers. But they certainly aren't winning any awards. So
I've had that happen, Jamar. Phone calls in the middle of battle.
Yeah.
The worst part's when you're tapping and it pops up and kicks you into the phone call.
Yeah. And this kind of ties into don't forget to take breaks. There are going to be sets that are unplayable because of your network connection and Niantic servers not being that great.
I think the most times we see server issues is when they're doing something specifically for PvP or at the beginning or end of a season.
Yes, when everyone's on, when everyone's playing, you can run into some pretty hefty server issues. So
I would recommend, if you really want to keep up to date, you can always join the Discord here with us, and we like to let people know, hey, we have people in our community that'll come in and say, don't do battles right now, servers are terrible, and we'll kind of share that information with everybody. And that's a good time to, maybe look back at some recordings, look at what you've been doing the last couple of days, maybe powering up some new stuff. Use that downtime for maintenance, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Adjusting my headphones here. Okay. And then one of the last slides here as far as our general content. I don't know how many people we've got here in chat. If anyone has any questions, we can do maybe a quick little Q&A thing here as we wrap up. We've got a resources page with a bunch of beginners resources. I've heard about Pokemon Go and don't know how it's played. Your title says 101. Let's see. It's White Tech. White Tech 055. I'll get to that question here in a moment. The resources page have a lot of beginner-friendly resources, from the type effectiveness charts to Silph Arena's homepage. Overall resources, you can go over to gamepress.gg/Pokemon Go. Tons of articles, a ton of information there. If you want a more analytical breakdown of some of the mechanics, Pokemon Go Hub has a page there you can go to. You can simulate battles and check rankings and such. Super nitty gritty with PvPoke, pvpoke.com. That's PvPoke.com. You can always look at Go Stadium if you're looking for a nice big community to hang out in that is PvP focused. There's some pretty hardcore gamers, pretty hardcore battlers over there in Go Stadium. You can check those out. There are IV rank checkers if you are wanting to care about IVs and are very curious. You can go to Go Stadium's rank checker. That's stadiumgaming.gg/rank-checker. And that you can input your IVs of caught Pokemon, or even Pokemon that you haven't caught. You can enter in IVs to see where that places within PvP ranks. And then there are apps on each device, each OS per mobile device. So Calci IV on Android. That's CALCYIV. That's over on the Android platform. You can download that. That actually is a overlay, so it will actually scan Pokemon in real time. PokeGenie, POKE with the little flare, Genie, GENIE. That's over on iOS, and that you will have to screenshot Pokemon stats, and then you will have to screenshot the Pokemon stats and then upload them into PokeGenie for it to be able to give you additional information as far as rank and performance. As well as you can hit up us, Jesse and I, as Battle Science over on Twitter, twitter.com/battle_science or @battle_science. Discord.gg/ this is a very, you probably don't want me to read this.
No, please.
These links will be in the presentation, and the presentation will be linked in the description of this, both in podcast services and on YouTube. You can catch us here on twitch.tv/battlescience. Over on YouTube, we still need the 100 subscribers to get youtube.com/battlescience. We're still on the way for that. And then battlescience.podbean.com will get you the podcast feed for the Battle Science podcast. Or you can go to your podcast service of choice, your Spotify's, your Google Plays, your Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or whatever they're calling their service now. So
I think it's iHeart.
It's a separate one, but I think we're on iHeartRadio.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Open up for some Q&A?
Yes, we have some advanced stuff that we can cover, but we could go over it here. But Ytech, tell me if I'm pronouncing it wrong, is asking about playing Pokemon Go. Jimmy Shim does bring up a good point. If you already have the game downloaded, that is step numero uno.
So what is Pokemon Go? Pokemon Go is, I think Steven likes to asterisk it with a mobile activity app.
Yes. So it is an activity tracker mixed with a Pokemon game.
A collection game.
Yes, a Pokemon collection game. So the primary objective is to go out and move. Yes, it is on the phone. It is a mobile game, so iPhones, Androids. I
think that's it right now.
Basically, there's probably another OS out there, like really minutely.
So 5 years ago, this came out and was explosive. I'm sure you've heard about it back then.
Mm-hmm.
The game ties into your real-world location. So let's say, for example, we live close to a major metropolitan, Seattle, and here in Washington. If we go down to Washington, if we go down to Seattle,
mm-hmm.
and we go sit at the Space Needle, there will be things in the game called stops and gyms, which are points of interest. Gyms relative to the main series games are somewhat the same in a sense of you go there and you fight other Pokemon. Stops are how you get the game has a really good tutorial once you boot the game. In a nutshell, Pokemon Go is a collection-based game where you have to actually physically walk down the street to catch these Pokemon. The Pokemon reappear. It's a constant live game. So the game is always, whenever you have the app open, is how you play. And even if you're not playing, the game's still going on. So if you were very interested, if you were a fan of the franchise and you want to give yourself a little bit of a taste of it, I would suggest downloading the app, reading the tutorial that the game presents to you, and picking a starter Pokemon when you load the game. Professor Willow is the main professor for this game. He will take you through the tutorial. If you're in a position where you can't leave your house, or you are, because I know with COVID in some countries, people are still in some of a semi-lockdown, they have recently reworked the game to be more safe for people to stay in one spot and play. But the whole premise of the game is to get out and explore.
And if you want to listen to our previous, this is sort of the end of part 2 of our player versus player battles 101. If you want to listen to part 1, you are more than welcome to give it a listen or give it a watch. The one thing is, if you don't have a whole lot of context as far as just playing Pokemon Go at all, there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to miss. So you can always give it a listen, see what sort of connects, or come back to it after you've played a little bit of Pokemon Go. Maybe give it a couple days.
There are a lot of resources out there on people that have put out to show you how to play Pokemon or give you tips on what to do when you're just starting out in Pokemon Go. You're more than welcome to join our server. The link should be down below if you're watching here live on the podcast or the Twitch chat.
Mm-hmm.
We also put it on as a tag for most of our servers. If you are unfamiliar with what Discord is, it is a Skype equivalent for gamers. It is more than just Skype, though. It is a video and voice chat and text. Think of it like, how would you compare Skype? Or how would you pair Discord?
I mean, I think Skype's actually probably a pretty reasonable. It's basically a like message board app.
Yeah.
So,
there, if you join us, we can help you out. If you have questions, plenty of people on our server that are willing to comment and help out. What are you giggling about?
Twitter.
Okay.
Tweets.
But let's, anything else to add?
Let's see. I think that's all of our links here. Are there any other questions?
Yeah,
from
any
the
questions
chat?
for us before we wrap up? If you're listening to this at a later date and you have questions, you want to let people know where they can contact us?
Yes. So Twitter at @battle_science. You can hit us up on the Discord. You can always follow us on Twitch. Hit us up in the Twitch chat anytime we're live. And then you can email us at battlescience.podcast@gmail.com if you want to send us a good old-fashioned email. I think that's...
How about Twitch chat? Anyone here in Twitch chat have a question for us?
Any other questions?
I have a question for you, Steven.
Okay.
If I'm just starting Silph Arena, or if I'm just starting Go Battle League today after listening to this, what would you recommend I run? What's something right now that I could go outside and find 3 of and use?
Let's see.
Not counting today's event.
Well, currently in this season, because it's location based, this is gonna kind of depend on location to location. Pidgey are all over the place. Pidgeotto. Pidgeot is a solid performer. Let's see. What else is spawning in the wild?
Beedrill's pretty good.
Beedrill's not bad. It's got some options. Let me pop open the game and see what's spawning and what's on the nearby. Oh, Farfetch'd.
I remember that.
Farfetch'd in Pokemon Go is
A regional.
Yes, Jesse's right. So it is only obtainable from
Asia.
Asia.
It is a continental based. There are certain Pokemon in Pokemon Go that they have selected to be exclusive to parts of our real world. Farfetch'd, unfortunately, is one of them. So for someone like White Tech here, who probably hasn't played the newer versions, they have introduced regional variants of Pokemon. So what we refer to as the original Farfetch'd is called Kanto Farfetch'd. Mm-hmm. There is another region which is based on Europe called Galar, which Farfetch'd takes on a different type and appearance and also gets an evolution. So that one has been incredibly relevant in the game recently. But that's a different story. Cantonian Farfetch'd in Pokemon Go isn't great, but it is something you will have to probably get from someone else because it is regional, but they also have held events where they have made it available to everybody in the world. And then to answer Jim's question, what's the best way to get into a Silph tournament? If you go to silph.gg, you can either, well, you first have to register an account, and it usually links with Google, Reddit, LinkedIn, or I think they've done Facebook now too. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think so.
But so once you've made an account on silph.gg, you can look at the map in your local area. They have a web tool for tournaments being held near you. Currently, as of this recording, you probably won't see any because the season won't start until next month. October, which they have stated they threw out a teaser image of next month's, or the first cup of the season's tournament, but we haven't got any details as of this recording. So silph.gg, local area map once we hit October, and then there will be tournaments that are shared. If you cannot find one, you are more than welcome to join our Discord. We host ones every month, and we usually run them for a duration of the month. We kind of talked about this, I think, on the first part of this series as well, about how we host tournaments and do stuff with them. I want to battle outside of GBL. No, I feel that. GBL can give you quick burnout if you just do just GBL. I think a lot of the player base really enjoys Silph because it is, like we've talked about, thematic and has different things that happen. It is just Great League at the moment. There is factions, which is another type of format within Silph. But if you want to join a local group on your map, check that out. If you can't find anybody, again, anybody's welcome to join us in the Discord. Jump in, tag me at RocketAdminJ, or find some way to get a hold of me. We'll give you what we call the Battle Lab role, which is tied to our Battle Lab Hydrogen.
But basically, that's our lobby. The original thought was if we had multiple battle science, if we had enough people to have multiple lobbies for each month's cup, we would be naming them after the different elements on the periodic table. So lobby 1 is hydrogen. Lobby 2 would have been, I believe, oxygen.
Yep.
But we only have enough people to run one lobby. So if you hop in and you want to join us for Silph Arena Cups, hop on in. You will get a notification saying someone joined the Discord. Just let us know that you want to join us for Silph Arena tournaments. We'll give you the Battle Lab tag. That way, Battle Lab tag, so that anyone and everyone that is interested in Silph Arena has that Battle Lab tag, so that when we are trying to figure out when we want to start tournaments, other details and such, we can tag basically everyone that's interested. So,
and when we start this season, like I do with every season for GBL, I'll run through the introductions. I'll run through the process and how we play out the tournaments for anybody that's new that's joining. And I know we've had a lot of good people recently joining our server. So when we go to start this season, I will do a nice introductory tutorial on how to PvP in Silph Arena.
Long Shadow.
Yes.
That's funny. The dynamic lighting within Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
Let's see. Advanced tactics. It's a whole lot of text. I won't worry about covering it. It's here in the presentation. It's not going anywhere.
So there's other stuff on the presentation that we didn't cover. If you want to check out some of those advanced tactics, we'll put them in the description after everything gets cleaned up and put out for show.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything?
Thank you for tuning in to our preseason primer.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking interest in PvP if you've stuck around this long.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very unforgiving part of the game, but if you are someone that enjoys competitiveness, change, and wants to learn a little bit more, it's also a great way to meet new people, especially once we get back to in-person tournaments for Silph.
Someday.
Let's
see. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, ways to improve, we will be doing I imagine, another much more pared down version of a Silph Arena Preseason Primer for next season in 2022. So give us that feedback. Be happy to take it and refine this. This is probably in total near 4 hour long listen. So we can pare this down to a much more consumable length in the future. Join us over in the Discord. Hit us up with some feedback. You can email us, hit us up on Twitter, all that fun stuff. Go over to YouTube and subscribe to the Battle Science YouTube channel so that we can hit 100 subscribers and get youtube.com/battlescience, because we can't have it until we reach 100 subscribers. Other fun stuff are coming down the pipe. So if you want to follow us for a community charity tournament, whatever other Extra Life event fun stuff we're going to be doing, Battle Science merch, goofing around, whatever is going to happen in this September edition of the Battle Science After Dark podcast, come hang out in our Discord. Yeah. I think that's it. We're nodding. We're both nodding.
Head nods.
This is an audio format without cameras. We're nodding. Thank you everybody for listening. We'll catch you out there on the battlefield.